Back in 1991, when Space Crusade was released, there were 4 Terminator-looking miniatures inside the box. These miniatures for the untrained eye look like Necrons. They were, in fact, Chaos Androids. Necrons didn't even exist until 1998, when White Dwarf 217 was released, and in its pages, they first introduced us to this mysterious ancient race of automatons. So it is safe to say that Space Crusade didn't have Necrons, but another weapon in the vast Chaos arsenal. In the epic 40k supplement called Renegades, Chaos Androids were presented as mechanical automatons inhabited by captive demons. These bound demons had to follow the orders of their masters, and since they were not very happy about the whole bondage situation, they would maliciously try to follow those orders in a way that would jeopardize their mission objectives. But the Space Crusade didn't get to this level of detail though. They simply were brutal, hard-hitting units that could take a pounding and kill space marines like nobody's business. But enough with the ancient history of the miniatures that we love, let's get to the painting of these guys. The color scheme that I chose to do with them is based on the one that appears on the side of the box right here. For the untrained eye, it looks simple, and for the untrained painter, simple equals easy. But for those of you who have been doing this for a while, painting white is a pain in the shiny metal ass. And on this video, I am going to show you how to get a crisp white without going crazy. So first, let's see what we need to do with these miniatures. I always start by taking a good look at the miniature. The sculpt is straightforwardly presenting us what we need to paint, and basically there are a few things that I need to focus on. The body consists of 4. The first one is the white plates, the second one is the gold color parts, the third is the joints and the servos, and the fourth and last one is the eyes and rivets. The other big area the miniature has is its weapon. It can be divided into 4 smaller areas as well. The main body, the barrel of the gun with its muzzle and magnet attached, a small skull icon, and some smaller parts and components, possibly a sight of some sort and some other stuff that I really don't know what it is. After I see all the different areas, I think about how to paint each one of them. I have a very good idea of what I want to achieve since I have source material to compare to. I have also a good idea of what paints I should use, but I do not really know how I should go painting the miniature. This is why I do, first of all, a test model, so I can see where I can save time, what things work, what things don't, and what things make no difference. This is very valuable information that helps with batch painting, although in this case it is only for 4 miniatures. If you plan to paint a regiment or a whole army, I strongly recommend you get one model first and experiment with it. It will save you loads of time in the long run. Now that I have my first miniature, this is how I do the whole process. So take notes, check out, these are the paints we're gonna use, and let's get on with it. The first part I want to paint is the body of the android. It is the biggest area, and doing this will allow me to get rid of the most boring part of the process, which will keep me motivated towards the end when I have the least amount of energy. The miniatures have been primed with grey spray paint and then with a zenithal coat of white, which creates subtle shadows in some areas and help create more volume. This is a very good idea for painting white. I further add shadows with apothecary white. If you want to add more subtle shading, you can use ultramarine grey in some areas and then add apothecary white in the deeper recesses. But I found the benefit from it marginal, so I discarded that step in lieu of speed. I focused in the rib areas as well as the eyebrows and the joints in the arms, legs, shoulders and back. Once I am done with this, I paint the gold areas with room fan steel. I use a silver color for all the areas painted in metallic colors: the sternum, the collarbone, the teeth, the hands and forearms, the feet, the barrel and the bayonet, and the small gadgets in the weapon. Here comes the interesting part for the gold. You do not need to own a gold paint. In fact, I have stopped using my Gehenna's gold quite a lot because I can create quite cool gold colors using only a silver color and my washes and contrast paints. Here I use Nazareth yellow to paint the areas in gold colors. Now it is time to add some extra contrast, as the colors are too flat, and some panel lining and extra shading will do wonders. The other trick I want to share with you is this fantastic thing called Flow Improver. I have talked about it in the past when I told you how I paint skeletons in my Dungeonvania series. I need to praise it once again, because for panel lining it is a lifesaver if you don't want to deal with oil paints. You just add a little bit to your washes and they run super smooth. This thing makes sure you can be more precise in reaching small crevices without staining all around them. I have left a link below to an affiliate purchase on Amazon, so if you want to help out and still get something cool for your painting, I cannot recommend enough having this on your arsenal of painting tricks. And also, since we are at it, click on that like button, subscribe if you haven't done it yet, and check out this new feature called Super Thanks, where you can donate to buy me a coffee or a beer for the content. Gracias! Let's get back to the painting at hand. You can see here the difference this small touch of black makes to the look. I mixed 3 parts Basilicanum Grey to 1 part Flow Improver, but the ratio differs depending if you use black paint, which will need more Flow Improver, maybe a 1:1 ratio, or more or less translucent paints such as Null Oil or Black Templars, to name a couple. I find Basilicanum is perfect for my needs here, but feel free to experiment with whatever you have and see how it works for you. Now remember, making mistakes is part of the process, and you should always try to fail better, because perfection is impossible to achieve. Next, I add some highlights on the metal with pure rune fine steel. This is optional, but I like to work on my metals a little more. In fact, I don't stop here, as then I do a glaze with Sigismund yellow to regain the vibrancy. As I said, this is optional back and forth, but I like the end result, so I'm going to stick to my guns on this one. We are going to return to the armor later, because now it is time to get on with the gun. I love the red era in Warhammer, and these miniatures will inevitably have some of the crisp reds that we will find in the color schemes from the 90s. This very crisp, very vivid red always had an orangish tint to it, and the way we are going to achieve this is by painting the gun first with Gryph-hound orange. Not only are we going to paint the guns, but we are also going to paint the eyes and the rivets in the armor with this color. Once it all dries, it is time to add red to the mix, and I'm going to use Engram red to do this, as air paints are quite translucent and I just want to do a light glaze that keeps the orange hue discernible. I try not to paint the borders with it, to mimic the highlights we see in this era of painting we are trying to emulate here. You basically can stop here, and if you have been careful with your washes, the mini will look finished. Not bad for a quick paint job, eh? But of course, I'll go the extra mile. The joints with cables are okay like this, but I want to add a dark blue hue to them. The reason, with the gold areas and the red weapon and rivets, we have 2 out of the 3 basic colors covered. But I like having all 3 because they catch the eye in a way that I cannot really explain. Having all 3 in one way or another makes the miniatures more appealing to me, and also has this colorful personality that adds to the vintage look. As you can see, I am being subtle with the approach by using Leviathan blue. Watered down, I use it to paint the joints and give that slight blue coloring there. I also paint the 8-pointed star on the forehead. It is a pain in the shiny metal ass to do, but the original mini had it, so I guess I'll have to do it too. It is cleanup time. Those areas staining, I clean with pure white.
Of course!
I also add some small dots on the eyes and the rivets to make them look as if they reflect light. The miniatures are finished, but the bases still need to be done. I have painted them with Gore Grunt of Fur, and now I add some Slayer orange with the brush. I am just putting paint here and there, rather haphazardly. I am going for rust if you haven't guessed yet, so no need to be especially careful with color placement. One finished and dry, I add some Magus purple in the same fashion. Then I dry brush Lead Belcher. And I paint some areas white in the panels, as I will add some colors on top to make them look like plates that had been painted and torn off walls, ceilings, etc. Notice the paint is slightly watered down, as if the colors have faded off and the rust is showing underneath. This is because after I paint them with whatever colors I fancy, they will look old and worn out. To add to this, I retouch here and there with some stains with Seraphine Sepia, Agrax Earthshade, and Nuln Oil. Those of you with keen eyes might have noticed some small beads in the bases. I want them to look like light sources. The Space Hulk, I imagine, has some emergency systems still running. One of them could very well be emergency lighting. These I painted white, and I also add some white paint around them. Then, using Aethermatic Blue, I paint those areas and the surfaces on the miniature that I assume will be hit by the faint light emanating from the beads. Here I am careful not to use the paint right out of the pot, spreading it a little so it is fainter and making sure that it's watered down enough to be even more subtle. After it dries, I put pure white on top of the bulb and paint the edges of the bases with black. We can now call it a day. Let's see some final pictures. As you have seen, these are very straightforward to paint miniatures. Not only that, but they are a very interesting small piece of history on the way that Warhammer 40k lore has developed. There is still enough space for Chaos Androids to be feasible in the 41st millennium, and although these will be considered Necrons by nowadays aficionados, Chaos could very well have human-sized androids powered by demons, and Games Workshop could revisit the concept in the future, no doubt about it. Watch this video next, and remember, my name is Miguel, this is Rush the Wash, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Un beso, adiós.